Hello, Pokey Peeps. Welcome to chapter 26. And disclaimer, detailed violence up ahead. So if you don't like violence or hearing about violence and you don't want to picture it, then don't continue this video. You have been warned. The next day, my perspective. Mom, I heard Serge yell from downstairs. Recently, she began calling me Mom and Auntie Dad. Auntie loves this. Well, I'm used to it. Before my parents died, they owned an orphanage. There were these twins, one boy, one girl. They were identical twins. The only person they truly loved was me. I was 12, 16 at the time. These children were younger than me by about 5 years. They began to call me Mom. It was a week before my parents died when those twins got adopted. They went to the funeral and even shed tears. I walked downstairs to find Serge and Blue ready to leave. Blue was on his leash. "Can I take Avra?" the 12-year-old Serge asked. I pounded this question for a moment. "Be careful," I replied. Serge smiled and hugged me. "I will. Thanks, Mom." Serge yelled, running outside with Blue behind her. I walked upstairs. I noticed Avra, Serge, and Blue flying by. Blue was flying besides Serge. Serge was flying on Avra's back. I smiled and ran upstairs. I walked into my bedroom and walked over to my balcony. I stood at the very edge. I looked over at the town. It was beautiful. I lifted my arms up and flew. I released my wings and soared through the air. I flew around buildings and towers. One building had an open window. Quickly, I stood through it like a bullet. Everyone inside freaked out. I quickly flew out of the window across the room. I looked on the outskirts of town. I noticed an army from Averia approaching. Instantly, I knew what to do. I shot down in front of them, my eyes glowing pink, and pink smoke formed around me. The head of the group chuckled. A queen is gonna kill us," he yelled sophisticatedly. I felt the anger run through my body. The men aimed their guns at me, ready to shoot. "Fire," a woman yelled. The bullets began to fly towards me. I formed a pink force field around me. Every bullet bounced off and hit the people who shot them. The leader flickered his hand towards me, and the army began to close in. He stayed back. The army was inches from me. Lead soldier's point of view. "Ha! That shows her. My army swallowed her whole." Suddenly, everyone around her went flying through the air. The witch had literally blown them away. She killed everyone who approached her. Eventually, I was the last one there. My perspective. I ran towards the man. He instantly fell to his knees. "Please," he asked. I shook out my hand. He rejected it and stood. He began to walk away, so I let my guard down. Suddenly, he rolled around with a gun and aimed at my head. He shot, but a body flew in front of the bullet. I looked to where the body came from, and he stood there. He threw the body to block the bullet, and he had distracted the man, so I snapped over to grab my hand around his neck. "There will be more," he stuttered. Suddenly, he slapped me across the face. I didn't know how. I felt the blood guzzle down my cheek. His claws scratched my arms. I dropped the man. He tackled me. After a moment, he was ripped off my body. I looked over and saw Auntie. Auntie ripped half of the man's face off, and I was dangling from his eye sockets. Where his cheek was, there was just blood and muscle, and his lips were on the ground. I stumbled to my feet. The man was clinging on to life. I smashed my foot in his head, crushing his head into bits. Auntie looked at me for a moment. I looked at my clothes. For some reason, when I took this state of anger, I changed colors. I changed clothes. I smiled and walked back into town. I strolled through like a badass. Auntie finally caught up to me. He was wearing a leather jacket and tight jeans. I realized I had blood all over my body, and not all of it was mine. Auntie did too. He rested his arm around my shoulder with a smirk. We look effing amazing. Alright, if you guys liked that video, please press like and subscribe if you haven't already.